is Belial? Belial, a figure shrouded in mystery and terror, is rarely discussed in depth in the Holy Scriptures, but his presence resonates strongly in apocryphal traditions and ancient religious writings. The name Belial, derived from Hebrew, can be translated as worthless, useless, or without purpose. However, unlike Lucifer, who led an open rebellion against God, Belial operated in the shadows, slowly corrupting divine structures and bringing chaos to the world. He was one of the first angels to fall from the heavenly heights, but his story, unlike other fallen angels, was never fully explored in the official scriptures. In the few texts where he appears, Belial is a figure of great complexity, acting not only as a follower of Satan, but as an independent agent of destruction and corruption. His revolt against divine order was so profound and devastating that in many cases, his mention was deliberately excluded from broader biblical narratives. Apocryphal tradition places him as one of the most powerful angels before the fall. Created as an angel of light, Belial had the purpose of directly serving the divine will, representing justice and cosmic harmony. However, like many of the fallen angels, something in his heart changed over time. This deviation from his original purpose transformed Belial into a force of chaos, associated with disorder and the breaking of divine laws. Unlike Satan, who led a visible and direct rebellion against God, Belial represents a more insidious kind of evil. He does not seek direct confrontation, but prefers to undermine divine order from within. He operates in the shadows, manipulating and corrupting through promises of freedom and power. This subtler approach makes his figure even more threatening, as his influence may go undetected until it has already caused irreversible damage. His name appears in passages of the Old Testament, but is rarely treated as a singular figure. Instead, he is often represented as a corrupting force that acts through wicked people. In Deuteronomy 15:9, for example, it says, "Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart," referring to a spirit of Belial that corrupts the human soul, especially in moments of selfish temptation. In apocryphal texts, Belial is more explicitly described as the bearer of chaos, the spirit that subverts the order established by God and instills rebellion among angels and men. In the Book of Jubilees, he is identified as the leader of all forms of ungodliness and the instigator of evil in the physical world. This places him in a unique position within the pantheon of fallen angels, as he not only embodies evil but delights in destroying any trace of divine harmony. His nature as a being of chaos sets him apart from other demonic figures. While Satan represents temptation and disobedience, Belial personifies the complete breakdown of law and order. He does not merely seek to turn men away from God, but to destroy the social and spiritual structures that uphold creation. This obsession with absolute chaos makes Belial a destructive force of epic proportions, going beyond mere moral corruption. Belial's influence, then, is not limited to great historical or spiritual events. It is also perceived in the small transgressions of daily life, in every moment when disorder and corruption gain ground. He acts through seemingly innocent attitudes, like selfishness and unchecked ambition, creating a spiral of chaos that over time can destroy families, communities, and even nations. This subtlety is what makes Belial so dangerous. He operates invisibly, infiltrating the hearts of leaders and rulers, corrupting them and leading them to actions that destroy the foundations of society. Through manipulation, he destabilizes kingdoms and empires, planting the seeds of discord and war. Unlike Satan, whose confrontation with Christ is direct, Belial corrupts slowly, and for this reason, his story was erased or minimized in the scriptures. In this video, we will explore how Belial became such a powerful and influential figure and why his story was deliberately suppressed from the scriptures. The exclusion of his narrative raises important questions about how we interpret evil and how it manifests in our spiritual and moral lives. The role of Belial in scripture and apocryphal texts. Belial is mentioned in the scriptures in a fragmented way, but his traces are present in various traditions and apocryphal texts. One of the few times he is explicitly mentioned is in 2 Corinthians 6:15, where the Apostle Paul asks, "What harmony is there between Christ and Belial?" This passage not only defines Belial as a force opposed to Christ, but also suggests a unique spiritual depth in this opposition. He is not just another demon subordinate to Satan. Belial is an autonomous force of chaos and disorder. Apocryphal Jewish tradition provides a richer context for the figure of Belial. In the Book of Jubilees, he is presented as the evil spirit that incites corruption and disorder in the physical world. His influence is seen in forms of selfishness, tyranny, and injustice. In this view, Belial acts not only as a tempter, but as the main architect of humanity's moral and spiritual destruction. He seeks not only to corrupt individuals, but to transform entire societies into realms of chaos. In the Sibylline oracles, Belial is compared to the Antichrist. His presence is associated with an era of total destruction, where chaos and disorder reign supreme. This apocalyptic association makes Belial a central figure in ancient visions of the end times, where he positions himself as an adversary capable of challenging celestial structures and bringing chaos to the very fabric of reality. The Book of Jubilees also presents a version of Belial as one of Satan's chief agents, although his actions are more independent. He is not content with blindly obeying, but seeks to expand the reach of the chaos he represents. Belial personifies rebellion against all forms of authority, from divine to earthly, and his influence is seen in tyrannical kings and unjust leaders. However, Belial does not act alone. His strength lies in his ability to manipulate and seduce other fallen angels, creating a legion of beings willing to follow his path of disorder. In The Ascension of Isaiah, he is described as a master of deception, able to transform and deceive those who try to stop him. This ability to change forms reflects his nature as a fluid and inconsistent being, always ready to corrupt where least expected. It is interesting to note that, unlike other fallen angels, Belial prefers to act in the shadows, manipulating leaders and corrupting the powerful instead of exposing himself directly. His influence can be seen in major historical events, such as wars and revolts, but also in small acts of selfishness and wickedness. This ability to operate on different levels makes his presence omnipresent and difficult to detect. For example, in 1 Samuel 10:27, the sons of Belial are mentioned as those who despise the authority of Saul, a king anointed by God. This contempt for divine authority reflects Belial's influence, who seeks to destabilize both divine and human structures. His sons are those who give themselves over to anarchy and rebellion, abandoning the order established by God in favor of chaos. Throughout apocryphal texts, Belial appears as the spirit that corrupts political and spiritual leaders. He does not need to manifest physically to wreak havoc. Instead, he plants seeds of disorder and destruction in the hearts of men, leading them to make selfish and destructive decisions. His ability to operate in the shadows, undetected, is one of his greatest weapons. Belial's subtle manipulation sets him apart from other demonic figures. He is the force that erodes the foundations of social and spiritual order, leading entire nations to collapse through moral corruption. This central role of Belial in destabilizing divine order is one of the reasons why his story was deliberately suppressed from canonical scriptures, but preserved in apocryphal texts. The relationship between Christ and Belial. The mention of Belial in 2 Corinthians 6:15 is one of the most intriguing in Scripture. When Paul asks, "What harmony is there between Christ and Belial?" he is pointing to an absolute opposition between two poles of spiritual power. Christ represents divine order, love, and justice, while Belial embodies disorder, rebellion, and chaos. This question suggests that Belial is not just another demon, but an antagonist of significant importance. This reference is particularly relevant because it raises the issue of the depth of opposition between Christ and the forces of evil. While Satan is widely recognized as Christ's principal adversary, Paul's choice to mention Belial suggests that he plays a specific and powerful role in the spiritual war. He personifies a force of disorder that directly opposes what Christ represents, the restoration of order and justice in the world. Christ, as we know, is the embodiment of divine love and the reconciliation between God and humanity. He brings order out of chaos. Belial, on the other hand, acts as the instigator of chaos, challenging this order in every form. Paul's question reflects the irreconcilable nature of these two beings, indicating that where Christ is, Belial cannot be, and vice versa. This opposition is reflected in many aspects of early Christian theology. The battle between good and evil is, at its core, a battle for order and harmony. While Satan attempts to corrupt humanity with promises of power and freedom without responsibility, Belial operates on a deeper level, corrupting the very concept of law and justice. He doesn't just aim to lead men astray from God, but to destroy the very structures that uphold the universe. Moreover, Belial's presence in apocryphal theology suggests that he was not content to be merely a follower of Satan. His ambition was greater, to overthrow divine order and create a realm where disorder reigns supreme. This places Belial on a unique level of spiritual threat, different from other demons that serve Satan. He seeks to destroy the very foundation upon which the divine plan of salvation was built. The absence of Belial in other New Testament passages might seem puzzling, but it also indicates the power of his influence. He is a figure who operates so deeply and insidiously that his presence is felt more in the results of his actions than in direct appearances. His subtle manipulation of spiritual and social structures reflects the internal struggle every human being faces in resisting the temptations of chaos and disorder. Another important point in the opposition between Christ and Belial is how each one approaches humanity. Christ came into the world to restore order through his sacrifice and redeeming love. Belial, on the other hand, opposes this mission on every level, promoting rebellion and the breaking of laws. His influence is so profound that many do not recognize his presence until disorder has already corrupted their hearts. Paul uses the mention of Belial as a warning to Christians. Harmony between Christ and Belial is impossible, just as light cannot coexist with darkness. This reflects a fundamental spiritual principle. Evil, though seductive, cannot coexist with good. This warning also serves to remind believers that Belial's influence, though subtle, can be devastating, corrupting divine order almost imperceptibly. In summary, Belial is not just one demon among many. He is the antithesis of Christ in terms of order and disorder, justice and chaos. His presence in Scripture and apocryphal texts reflects a deep spiritual struggle that continues to shape humanity's understanding of good and evil. Paul's mention in 2 Corinthians serves as a reminder that evil is not just an external force, but something that can infiltrate spiritual and social structures. This spiritual war between Christ and Belial reflects a larger struggle for the destiny of humanity. While Christ offers salvation and redemption, Belial seeks to destroy creation and subvert divine order. The battle between these two forces does not only take place on an abstract spiritual plane, but manifests in the daily lives of individuals, in their choices between good and evil.